Hi, thanks again for joining me here on the Traveling in Ireland podcast. This is another one of my live from Ireland podcasts, and I am probably in one of the most beautiful spots in Ireland and officially the third best garden in the world, Powerscourt Gardens on the Powerscourt Estate in County Wicklow. And I am so excited to be joined by Alex Slazenger, who is the head gardener of this beautiful estate, this beautiful, huge estate.
Yeah. Well, it's not as big as it used to be, Jody. But look, really nice to talk to you. Like you said, yeah, I'm the head gardener here, but I'm also part of the family. So we bought the estate in 1961. So there's a real added attachment and a real childhood kind of memories of this place.
Of course. And so I know that so there's a film in the in Powerscourt House, yes, yeah, that talks about you and your cousin, who is the estate manager,
managing
director, yes, and then the 11th Lord Powerscourt, yes, who is your first cousin.
Yes. Now we just call him Anthony.
He doesn't hold you rigorous there.
No.
And you give a really beautiful overview of the estate itself. So how many acres are the gardens?
Right. So what we're in at the moment, what tourists can come into, is 47 acres. But the estate is a lot larger. It's just under 1,000, which is quite manageable. Mm-hmm. However, when we bought the estate in 1961, it was 17,000 acres. Oh, wow. And before that, dating back to the Wingfield's time, it was 46,000 acres. So a big part of the County Wicklow that we're in at the moment.
So the Wicklow National Park would have been part of Powerscourt at the time?
Some of it would have been. We had a lot of the mountain land that all had to be sold back to the government. But really, when you think about it, the 1,000 acres that we have here is plenty, absolutely plenty. For me, anyway, to manage. But look, I think the thing you have to remember about Powerscourt is it's been here a long time. Mm-hmm. So this area that we're in, it was a very kind of, going back, I'm talking about the 1300s, a very kind of strategic area of Ireland. So we're just sort of south of Dublin. But we're far enough away, so this definitely would have been a kind of a military outpost. And I mean, we've records here of this area dating back to 800 AD, so a Viking settlement called Stagnan Hill. Huge daily markets in the area. That would have been unusual. It would have shown how big the population for the time was.
And prosperous too, right?
Very prosperous, really good land. So Wicklow is well known for a lot of farming. And that ties in with my family as well. So just to give you a little backstory on the estate, my family was the Slazenger family, so we were the sports equipment. We started off as umbrella makers. We came originally from Israel through Germany and Poland and then over to Manchester and started making umbrellas. Then we acquired a contract with Wimbledon to start making tennis balls for Wimbledon, which is still used today, one of the oldest sporting contracts in the world. Unfortunately, we couldn't keep the Slazenger business going. We basically just sort of ran out of money. My grandfather was what you might call a bit of a mad scientist, bit of a visionary, but he was a physicist and an engineer. Okay. And sitting at his breakfast table one morning, he saw an advertisement for the sale of this estate. Now, my grandparents knew the Wingfields. My grandmother was big into cattle farming and cattle breeding. She was a cattle breeder from the UK. So they knew each other through that. And the for sale sign came up in the paper, which was a big picture of the waterfall here. So part of the estate, for your listeners, is we've got different areas, and one of them is the waterfall, which is natural area, the highest waterfall in Ireland. And he saw the picture and he thought, ooh, hydropower. That's what I can do. Hydropower, that's what I want to do. So he approached Lord Powerscourt and said, I'd love to buy your waterfall. And he said, well, it's not just the waterfall, the whole estate comes with it. So they went away and they thought about it and they said, how are we going to make this work? And my grandmother said, well, there's a big farm. I can farm. That's what I want to do. and you can do your science experiments, etc. But what are we going to do with the rest of the estate? What about opening it up to tourism? And everybody thought she was absolutely insane. Ireland in the 60s was not a destination that people came to visit. It was cold, wet, damp, very, very poor. But she had a vision. She thought there's something like this has to be shared. And she wanted to share it with the world and have people come in and visit. So she persisted, and she decided to open it up to the public. And the whole sustainability idea of the waterfall and generating hydropower, we've kind of come full circle. We've been certified as Ireland's first visitor attraction to be certified sustainable. So that's a big passion of mine. People sort of say, oh, sustainability, so you don't do anything bad, you've stopped doing everything. That's not the case. It's about engineering and developing new ways, or even looking into the past and seeing how our ancestors used to garden. How did they combat disease? How did they fertilize? How did they manage the trees and everything? So it's been really interesting for me looking into the past and coming up with different techniques of managing the estate, but also then educating the public and our visitors. This is why this looks like this. There is a reason. It's not just because we're being lazy or we're not managing this area. This is for biodiversity or for an ecology reason. So it's a really, really exciting time at Powerscourt, and I'm really happy to be part of it.
And the gardens are absolutely beautiful. We are sitting here, it is the very beginning of April. There's quite a bit of color, not as much as you're probably going to see in the next 4 weeks.
Exactly.
But still absolutely breathtaking. The views across the valley and everything are just, take your breath away, stunning. But do you want to share just kind of an overview of the areas of the gardens?
Yeah. Absolutely. So we're a real mix of formal and informal. And I think this is really important because everybody's individual. And when they come to visit a garden, everybody has different things they like. Some people love straight lines and symmetry and everything in nice, neat order, tightly trimmed bushes, all that kind of thing. Other people just want to ramble through a forest. So we cater for both of these, and that's within the 47 acres we have. We won an award from National Geographic for third best garden in the world. It was for formal gardens.
Oh, okay.
So it's the Italian garden, which is very symmetrical, and Italian gardens are very neat and tidy. And ahead of us was Kew, which is a fantastic garden in the UK, and then obviously Versailles. So really, really good company.
Steep competition for sure.
Yeah, and it's great getting these awards because it keeps you motivated. So it makes us want to improve the garden, especially the formal area. But once you move out of the formal setting of the garden, you move into a more wild style of garden. We've allowed certain things to take over. We've stopped mowing at certain times of the year. And this is all in mind with pollinators, with bees. So one of our kind of mottos here is work with nature. And I think that's really, really important, that
Vital.
Nature has a way of doing it. It's been here a very long time. It's been able to manage itself a very long time.
When we try to control nature, that's when things go wrong, right?
Exactly. So, you can manipulate it a certain amount, but it's nicer to work with it. I have this phrase that I always use, and it's called biophilia. And biophilia basically means humans need to interact with nature. We're part of this planet. We have a connection to this planet. We should have a symbiotic relationship with the plants and the animals on the planet. And biophilia is having access to nature. Now, it doesn't have to be a garden like Powerscourt. It just has to be a green space or access to something. So if you're sitting in an office and you're looking out your office window, if you're looking onto a concrete block or a wall, but beside you your colleague is looking out onto a tree or something, it's how that improves their mental state, their productivity, all that kind of thing. So we're designed to be in nature, and I think a lot of our lives for people we're not. So I think it's really important to try and access nature whenever you can, even if it's for an hour a day or 20 minutes or 5 minutes. It's really important to actually reconnect with what you're meant to be doing. And trees, I love trees. Trees are absolutely my passion. Great for your white blood cell count. The more time you spend around trees, the more your white blood cells increase. So that's your immune system.
Does that have to do with breathing deep?
It's being part of it. It's this deep connection.
I feel like I always breathe deeper when I'm out, hiking.
Exactly.
You're out in it, and I imagine that has to help the white blood cell count.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a big advocate of that, and especially with I work a lot with the local schools and kids, and I think it's really, really important that we get our kids back into nature. I will never stop children rolling down the big banks here, climbing the trees, because that's what they're meant to do. And if we don't encourage that, we're going to lose it. And they're not going to be able to do this, and they're going to lose that connection. So I think it's really important to use Powerscourt as a platform to encourage that kind of outdoor inspiration.
So now I think I read somewhere that the Pepper Pot Tower was actually built as a playhouse.
Yeah. I have a couple of funny stories. I don't know if I should mention some of these things now. I'll tell you, Jody, I was a terrible child. I was a typical boy, okay? Myself and my brother. And very quickly, I'll tell you, I can remember the point where I decided to become a gardener. I was 4 years of age. And I was, as boys do, messing with a bamboo stick and running around my garden and chopping my mother's daffodil heads. And yeah, she didn't like this, so I got a good chase, and I decided from then, maybe it's time I look after this instead of destroying it. And the sorry, I'm diverting there. Coming back to the Pepper Pot Tower, I remember the Pepper Pot Tower. It used to you weren't able to get up to the top, but me and my brother were able to put a rope up and climb up. And this is, maybe I shouldn't be saying this. We used to
no scaling the tower when you visit.
Yeah, we used to tease the tourists come and we come up with water balloons and throw them down at it. And Bridget, who used to work here, used to come out and says, "I know it's you, Alex. I'm telling your mother." So, yeah, the Pepper Pot Tower was a folly. But that's not the only reason. And I think the other reasons are really, really important. Lord Powerscourt was part of the Scouts. You're familiar with Scouts? Basically kids that join up a club and they learn how to
kind of Boy Scouts.
Exactly. Camp outside, build fires, etc. And he was a Scoutmaster. So the Pepper Pot Tower looks down on the Tower Valley towards what we have as a river. And the Scouts would camp down there. So he could keep an eye on the campfires and he'd know when they were there. But the other reason, and I think the one that I love the most, is the appreciation of the trees and the collections. So back then, they could only look at the trees and up at the trees. But he wasn't happy with this. He wanted to see all angles. So he wanted to see down on them. So he wanted to see it. So he built this for his children, for the Scouts, but also for the appreciation of trees, which I think is beautiful because it shows how much they loved their collection. And this was a real collection of trees from all across the world. Yeah,
because when you walk, so I know you have a tree walk, and then as you're walking through the gardens, you will see multiple different trees. I think my favorite spot in the gardens is to get down into the Japanese garden. It's just one of those magical little spots. And then obviously on the other side of the lake, looking back at the house, that's just one of those. That's your Italian, is that the Italian?
That's the Italian garden. So yeah, that lake is kind of the interaction point between a real man-made garden and the natural landscape. And I think that's always important when you're designing gardens, is to show what's man-made and what's natural, and just to show the interaction between it. But the Japanese garden, that's a fantastic spot.
It really is.
It's so quiet down there. We have great family parties there during the summer. Back in the 1920s, there was great jazz parties down there. So some
it
great
sits in
history.
a nice little valley where the music would just.
It's actually a reclaimed bog.
Really?
So it's the wettest part of the estate. And everything fed down, all the water fed down there. So it was a natural idea to put in a Japanese garden, which are a lot of the plants there are predominantly acidic, magnolias, azaleas, rhododendrons. So it's a really, really good spot of the garden. There's an area down there called the Grotto, which the Japanese garden dates to about 1906. So it's relatively new, but the Grotto dates back to the 1720s. And this is fossilized sphagnum moss, and it's a cooling off period. So when you go down there in the height of summer, and we don't get particularly warm summers, but occasionally we can, and it can go up to sort of 30 degrees. It cools you down. Yeah. So it's about 3 or 4 degrees cooler, and it was actually designed for women who were wearing tight corsets. Yes. It was a very private part of the garden, as you're aware. It's sort of surrounded, so they could go down and they could loosen the corsets and breathe a little bit and chat, and without being disturbed. So absolutely one of my favourite parts. First thing in the morning, I'm always in every morning, and I like to do kind of a round of the garden, just get the lay, and I'll always go down and just sit and just take it in. I think that's, we're so busy. Everybody's lives are so busy. We're always rushing around. We've got everything planned all the time. What we want to try and get across when you visit Powerscourt, this might just be an hour or 2 hours that you can just switch off. Forget all the madness that's going on in your life and just reconnect. Take stock of what maybe is really good in your life and just be peaceful. And I think that's really important in a garden. That's what a garden should be. It shouldn't be a highly stressed, or it should be exciting, but not too it's a place to relax.
And I love Powerscourt. If I fly into Dublin and I have my way, I'm directly for Wicklow, because especially coming off an international flight, I don't sleep on planes, but I know I need to stay up and be active. It's 45 minutes from the airport, and then you're here, you have a great lunch at Avoca, and then you just get out, you walk, you breathe the beautiful mountain air, and it re-energizes you. And I think it's just a spectacular first stop. If Dublin City isn't your first stop, then I feel like Wicklow should be.
I feel like I rarely leave Wicklow. There's no need. But you're absolutely, our biggest thing is how close we are to Dublin, yet how far away from Dublin you feel when you get here. You wouldn't believe the
so
city
close.
is 30 minutes up the motorway, and it's just peaceful. There's something, and you've got the mountain. Okay, they're not huge mountains, not like you'd have in the States, but big
nice
for us,
mountains.
and just enough. So you really feel like you're in the wild.
Okay, so now I have probably the hardest question for you. So we're here in the spring. Like I said, there's beautiful color. The trees are, it's absolutely stunning. I've been here in the late fall. Again, you're not the height of the season. So for people who are wanting that height of the season, color exploding everywhere, when is the best time to visit Powerscourt for that?
For that, that's a really interesting question. So I'll just run. This is lovely. We're here now, and this is kind of spring, but it's not quite yet. In about 3 weeks' time, it's really going to peak from a spring point of view. Then it takes a little lull. And I would kind of say the best time to visit Powerscourt is probably in June.
Okay.
July, then it takes, the plants take a little lull. So there's a kind of transition between what's finishing and what's starting. But June is a fantastic month. Generally, we get pretty good weather, not too hot, not too much rain. You've got all the trees are all in leaf, and some of them are flowering, so you get all that. We've got the conifer collection, the evergreen collection, which looks good all year round. The herbaceous border is fantastic.
Yes,
this is
that beautiful
just behind
line,
the hedge there where we are, and that's stunning. So that's really at its peak kind of in June, maybe the mid-June.
I don't know, it wasn't too shabby in October.
It's a very difficult question, because I say,
isn't it?
Personally, my favorite time is autumn. And now that's from a gardener's point of view, because the madness of the summer work has ended and things have calmed down, and we're starting to look towards winter projects and the autumn colour. There's something about the sunlight, the height of the sun. You get great evening light in the autumn.
That beautiful golden glow.
Yeah, it's just, and you get that kind of freshness again in the air. The sort of the heat of the summer has gone, and you get that you can sort of breathe in and smell all the sort of the cold almost coming. But that's just from a gardener's point of view, because we've eased off the work a little bit, and we're looking to come up with project work. But definitely I think June, again, even in August and actually September.
Yeah.
I mean, our seasons are changing. We kind of run our calendars on a very old Celtic calendar, which was created 2,000 plus years ago.
Right.
Our seasons are changing, and we've noticed that in the gardens the last couple of years. We're getting winter is now January, February, March even. We're getting quite short springs. We're getting kind of longer summers that run right into September, sometimes even October. And then autumn is coming late. Even you could almost sometimes say autumn could be sort of December, nearly around Christmas. But that's really key from a gardener's point of view of how you manage and how you decide when to do tasks. It's not just looking at a calendar. It's being on the ground and saying, okay, the temperatures are coming up, soil temperatures, birds, animals. It's called phenology. It's how birds and animals react to seasons and how trees react. So as a gardener, you're always outside. So you're very aware of your surroundings and how things change. A little bit trickier if you're trying to plan a trip. But what I will say to people is give a little bit of wiggle room. Of about 3 weeks. If you're expecting to see tulips in flower, depending on the season that it's been, they could be a little later or a little earlier. So it's very hard to put a time on something.
Right. Well, so this is the very beginning of April. We're seeing some roses, some tulips. I believe the magnolias have already bloomed. We saw those down in the Japanese garden.
Prunus cerulata tahaku, which is the great white cherry, which is the old traditional cherry, and that's in the Japanese garden. That's just looking really, really good at the moment. So,
but then in 3 weeks, you're going to have all your late spring, summer flowers popping up. And I love the way that, like you said, you're working with the seasons. And so whatever, you've always got something coming up.
Yeah.
The different
I'm always
seasonal,
busy.
the different seasonal plants are always, always in bloom. So,
but it's great. Look, I think it's a really exciting time with horticulture and gardens. And I think this is important to share this to your listeners as well, is how gardens are starting to evolve. Plants have evolved for millions of years and have changed and have moved around, moved around the planet. But we're really starting to look at what other plants can we introduce. Obviously with sustainability, we're trying to reduce chemical input, but we're looking at what plants help with that. So again, it's really exciting because we're researching particular plants for fungal defense on roses, and we're using salvias, sage plants, and they will combat fungal disease naturally because they emit sulfur, which means that we can reduce our chemical input. And then certain things like using sort of no mowing, all of that, leaving things to naturalize, not cutting at certain times. So it is changing, and what we can now grow is changing as well. So we're looking at a lot about climate matching and how our climate's going to be in 50 years' time. And the current projections are we could be like the south of England, which could completely change our flora and how we do things. But it's about adapting to that and starting to plant in species that we can ensure that they will survive in the next 50 to 100, 200, 300, 500 years. I mean, my people say, oh, what are your plans? What are your plans? I said, well, I've got this week's plan, I've got the year's plan, and I've got my 50 to 100 year plan. So it's always, what we're doing here is we're ensuring that this garden is going to develop and evolve correctly, and that people can appreciate it and take inspiration and bring that back to where they're gardening, so they can use that information for their own gardens.
Well, I was telling Doug yesterday as we were on the estate that it's so impressive to see the garden center, you know, because there's so much inspiration to gather here. But then it's almost unfair to have a garden center because you're going to go home and you're going to be like, here's how I saw it, here's how I picture it. And recreating it could be impossible, but absolutely a stunning place to visit. So beautiful. And I would say that if you're planning to visit, give yourself 2 hours at a very minimum. And if you can, just plan for the afternoon, because rushing away is just...
If you can, turn your phones off. I know that's terrible to say. I always have this thing, I said, when people come in those gates, I want them to feel soulful romance.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to achieve here, is that just it's a refuge for people to come and to visit and just to enjoy and get inspired. Yeah. And get sort of,
take a few pictures and then put it in your pocket.
Yeah, okay, I might not be able to recreate this at home, but what can I do? And give them the motivation to get out and get involved and interact with nature and just enjoy their space, you know?
Oh, Alex, it's been so much fun talking to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for sharing your memories of growing up here, as well as everything you're doing with the garden. This is just a fabulous space.
Brilliant.
And
lovely
so
to meet you as well, Jody. And Doug.
And Doug. Poor Doug has to sit on the sidelines. Yeah, he's been doing it for the last 10 days.
Yeah,
he survives.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.